passionate, driven, enthusiastic, euphoric. This is who we are as entrepreneurs. But how we leverage these incredible attributes to dream and build businesses that scale and grow is what this podcast is all about. Hello, I'm attorneypreneur Josh Brown, and welcome to Franchise Euphoria. Hello, everybody. Welcome to 2015. Josh Brown here on the Franchise Euphoria podcast, and I cannot think of a better person to kick off 2015 than my guest today, Ace Chapman. He is a shining example of how anything is possible. You put your mind to it, you put the work into it, and you can make things happen. And that is my mantra for 2015. Hope everybody closed out 2014 strong. But one thing I know is we are going to kick off 2015 in a very strong way. Really looking forward to it. And I hope you enjoy this interview. Are you crazy enough to believe that anything is possible in business and life? Well, Ace Chapman is, and I am thrilled to have him on Franchise Euphoria today. As a kid, Ace was crazy enough to believe that anything is possible, and now as an adult, he knows anything is possible. After growing a couple of million-dollar businesses before the age of 27, he found his real joy in helping other people become financially free. He is a free-spirited entrepreneur and personal development coach, and at one point was a successful franchise owner, and I know deals in the franchise space quite often. Hello, Ace, and welcome to the show.
Glad to be on with you, Josh.
So it just sounds like you're living the dream.
Well, I do get to do work that I love, and I don't think that can be replaced. I know so many people that just drag themselves out of bed every Monday, and I get to do something that deep down I'm passionate about and work with really amazing people all around the world. So I cannot complain.
Well, just to give the listeners sort of a reference point, take a couple minutes and talk about those businesses that you built up before the age of 27. In particular, obviously, what they were and what you did, but how ultimately it wasn't what you thought it was going to be.
Well, so I got into all of this stuff because I was a user of a stock market simulator back in 1998 that allowed you to play money and invest it in the real stock market and kind of test your skills, if you will. And me getting into that was something I was doing for fun. But then after using it for a little while, I realized that the owners of the site weren't very engaged. They were terrible with the site going down. They never answered any members' questions. And so I reached out to them and ended up doing that deal. And pretty instantly was able to contrast buying an existing profitable business from starting from scratch. And that's what made me fall in love with buying businesses. After that, actually because of the internet crash in 2000, 2001, I kind of fell out of love with the internet and got into offline businesses, which actually led me to doing a couple of franchise deals. So I bought some existing franchises. One of them was a Plato's Closet. Another one actually was a franchise called Homevestors, and really fell in love with the fact that you could have this system for everything from hiring to marketing to operations. It just was kind of a breath of fresh air. But the crazy thing was I had grown the Homevestor business to a multi-million-dollar kind of a year business, and was really just working myself to death. I mean, could not take a vacation, day in, day out, kind of putting in the hours. And once I sold that business, I was able to kind of recalibrate and come up with what my true goals were. And so the biggest problem before the Homevestor deal was I always felt like I want to be this huge mega millionaire. Like I want to have all this money, and that was really my main goal. And after that, I realized that what I really wanted was time freedom and the ability to do the things I love and be involved in businesses that I really enjoy, because I really did love business, but I wanted to own a business and not have a business own me.
Well, I think that's really interesting. I think a couple of things I picked up there. First is that you seem to have found success and figured out a little bit of your own secret sauce in buying existing businesses, as opposed, even if they're franchise, buying existing franchises as opposed to starting them from scratch or building them out, even if you're a franchisee from scratch. I think that's one important point. And the other point is that, your ultimate goal really shifted along the way. Now, real quick, with Homevestors, that's the franchise, the We Buy Ugly Houses franchise. Okay, so it's in the real estate space.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so you bought with the Plato's Closet and the Homevestors. These were existing already. Were these resales?
Yeah. So I ended up doing a couple of resale deals.
Well, see, I'm always interested in that. I just interviewed somebody else named Jean Kuhn, who's a successful entrepreneur and franchise owner, and she does the same thing where she figured out, she went to or learned that an existing franchise was up for sale and figured that if she changed a few things, she could really make it successful. And I think one of the things about people like yourself and Jean that do that is sometimes you don't realize, that's a talent in and of itself, because when you're going in and you're buying a business that somebody else was not successful in doing, I'm curious how you looked at the business and what you saw that was different from what the original operators were doing.
Well, a couple of things. And one of the things that actually a Subway deal was the very first franchise deal that I did. And I noticed the same thing in all of them. The operator was a little bit disengaged. One of the powers that you have with a franchise is that you don't have to be tied into the details of every aspect of the business. And in that case, the owner of that franchise had 13 units. And so I love finding deals where the owner has a lot of units. That is usually a sign that they're making money, but it's just not possible for the actual owner to be involved in the day-to-day operations when they've got so many units. And that attention to detail, that attention to customer service, being able to watch staff and those kinds of things can make a huge difference in the bottom line, just keeping it really, really simple and operating a great business.
Well, and I think that, I think that's a really good strategy. Did you find with some of these multi-unit owners, because multi-unit operators, it's becoming, it's always sort of been a popular model, but I think more and more franchisors are taking advantage of that, obviously because they see somebody who is a proven operator and they want them to own more stores. But I think from the franchisee's perspective too, so much of it comes down to location and other factors that obviously if you have more units, if one's doing better than the other, you can you can help each of the operations from one to the next, and it gives you a little bit more leverage and possibly the advantage of economies of scale, although not always. Did you find that to be the case?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Even when we ended up owning 3 Subways, ended up owning a couple of Plato's and a couple of units of Homevestors. So, one of the things that I love to look for is different strengths in the business. And this is whether it's a franchise or just individual business. When I'm buying a business, I want to look for a strength and see if I'm able to carry that into some other units. And so that may be having a very great manager, or somebody who a strong operational team, or really good at doing the marketing sides of the business. And so you can end up taking that into another unit where, I've done deals where I buy one business that has strong operations, and then we go out on a search to find another business that is strong in marketing. And so together those businesses become really great. We've got the one I'm thinking of, that business, the marketing was terrible, but they had just incredible customer service and operations. And the other business, their customer service was terrible, but they were so good at marketing that they were still making money. So you put those two businesses together and, bring the systems for the strengths over to the other business. And most of the time, you still only want to do a profitable deal, but that makes both of them even more profitable.
Now, so you had Subway's, Plato's Closets, and Homevestors. I mean, those are three very different franchise systems. And
yeah.
I'm curious, first of all, which did you feel like you were best equipped to go in and run or own?
Yeah, because I couldn't have run any of them. I was talking to a guy the other day. It's like, I've got a couple retail type businesses right now, and he's like, "So, how much time do you actually spend at the register, serving customers?" And I hadn't thought about it, but in that moment, I realized I don't even know how to use the register.
Wow.
So, one of the really neat things is I had an amazing employee in one business, and so when I bought the Plato's franchise, I literally was able to send a manager up there and get all of the training. We took over that business, and so she was the expert. I didn't have to be the expert. I could be an owner, understand the metrics and what's going on in the business. I mean, as far as sheer growth, okay, so this is a funny thing. I would say the one that was I was really good at was Homevestors, because it took me a long time to realize it, but my skill is deal making. So every day I got to come in and make deals. And so that was a really great business for me. But the downside to that is that I'm a deal maker, and it's kind of like the E-Myth thing of the worst business for a mechanic to start is a auto shop. So if you want to own a business, sometimes it's not a good idea to do something that you are really good at.
Well, that's interesting. I got to stop you there. We got to talk about this for a minute.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a really interesting point. I think it's totally on the mark for someone like yourself, but I think it could be a disaster for somebody else who's not like yourself, because obviously your strength is, like you said, in making the deals. And a part of that has got to be, part of being a great deal maker is you have to understand the numbers. And so obviously from your perspective coming in, you're very good at taking a look at the numbers. Now, to a lot of people though, if they buy a franchise that they know nothing about and have no interest in, yet they're not particularly good at just the numbers, that could be a total disaster. Right. I mean, it's just interesting to me because I've seen that on both sides where, like, and this is a point I want to highlight because I think it's an important one to make, is that very clear what your strengths are. And, a lot of times in franchising, I find is that people will get into businesses and they'll fall under the myth that, okay, the business is just going to run itself and I don't really have to know much of anything. And yet, then just intuitively they start getting involved in the day-to-day stuff and they just don't know how to do any of the things, and they realize they don't have any interest in it, and it becomes a total disaster. Whereas, like, with your situation, it seems like you always knew sort of where even though if it wasn't crystal clear at the outset, it became crystal clear that you were good at looking at things from the periphery and then being able to fine tune and say, and you had that trust in somebody to go in who could actually go in and run the day-to-day operations.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that people have to get a clear vision of, is what do you want out of the business? Is it to, kind of be involved and be able to grow the business, or is it to be the owner? I knew with Plato's Closet, I knew nothing about teen fashion and could absolutely care less about the fashion aspects of the business. But when we took over it, it was doing maybe about 450 in revenues and grew it to about 600. And I felt like that was the max that business could grow, and I sold it. But fortunately, I kept some equity, and we were able to grow that business to a last year over $1.2 million.
Oh, nice.
So it really depends on what your goals are, what your expertise are, and in that case, me knowing not absolutely nothing about the product that was being sold didn't hinder it from becoming a large business.
Well, I want to tell you a quick story, and then I want to move on and talk about some of the franchise deals and some of the things that you do now with some of your expertise. But when you talk about not knowing, about Plato's Closet or not knowing how to run a cash register, there's I'm in Indiana, and there's a very well known pizza place here called Basbo's, and they've got several locations here. It's not a franchise. It's just owned by one guy. And I went into one of the original locations. This was a couple years back. And was picking up a bunch of pizzas, for family and whatnot. And the person behind the register was really struggling. And it took about 15 minutes. And, he's kind of going, oh, man, I don't really know how to do this. And I'm sort of feeling bad for the guy. And I said, and I kind of looked at him. I go, is this your first day? And he started cracking up. He goes, no, I actually own the place. And
oh my goodness, terrible.
And he goes, you want to know something funny? You want to know something even better? And I said, what? He goes, I don't even know how to make a pizza either. So to your point,
I wouldn't recommend that. I wouldn't recommend that, especially for first time business owner. When I talk about not knowing how to afford the register, I think that's a lot more. It's feasible when I own over 30 businesses at this point. So it's a little different.
Well, and to his defense too, at this point in time when I went in, he had already had these pizza places for over 20 years.
Yeah, that's what people, they don't realize that. They think that the guy that's been in it forever knows everything, but you eventually move to a goal. And I think that's something that gets people excited.
That's the only way to scale.
Realize that absolutely. Absolutely, that's it.
So tell me about what you're doing now and some of the work that you're doing, because I think it's really interesting what you're doing to help other people, and then some of the work that you're doing with helping people buying and selling franchises.
So at this point, there's a huge opportunity in the economy dealing with baby boomers and really just business owners that want to exit their business. Because of the baby boomers, there are a lot of businesses entering the market, and that's affecting even the average business owner that just wants to exit and maybe move on to another career. There are about 2 million baby boomers that are entrepreneurs and business owners. They're going to have to exit those businesses. And I realized about 5 years ago, I was like, man, this is such a tremendous opportunity to buy existing businesses. And it was unbelievable to me that it wasn't even a part of the conversation. And one of the reasons that it took me a long time to even realize what I was doing, it was kind of, I'd buy a business. My first one of them was sold because my accountant came to me and just wanted to buy it, had a buyer that wanted to buy it from me. Then, another one or so because I had a guy that wanted to just approach me. Then I realized, okay, well, so it wasn't as if I had this grand vision for buying and selling businesses. And a lot of the reason that I didn't have that grand vision was because it's not even a part of the conversation when you talk about entrepreneurship. Nobody talks about going out and just buying an existing franchise. Nobody talks about going out and buying an existing business. The whole conversation, if not at least 99.99% of it, is starting a business from scratch every time you bring up entrepreneurship. So I was really passionate at that point just about getting the word out. And so I started to connect with some other people. And what's happened over the last 5 years is we've built a network of people all over the country and now in different countries that are going out, buying these businesses, helping business owners by being a nice, quick, easy source to exit their business without the headaches. And a lot of people don't realize that 80% of the businesses that come on the market never end up selling. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunities out there.
Now, so are you essentially brokering the deals, or what's your role in that?
So I act. It depends. I mean, a lot of the folks in our network are finding deals. So sometimes we'll act as a broker, but 90% of the deals that the folks in our network are doing, they're actually going out. So they pay to be a part of our network, and they go out and find deals.
Really?
Yeah. So instead of just, everybody at even a gut level knows that the best deal for anything is never advertised or, listed. If it's an incredible deal, it's not going to make it to being in some kind of marketplace. So we want to get access to those deals that aren't marketed, because a real estate agent, as soon as they get an amazing deal, they're going to keep that as a pocket listing, call up a couple buddies, and let them in on it.
Yeah.
So we want to go after those places where the people may be in a situation where they do need to get rid of their business, and we can help make that easy, quick, and painless as possible.
So you set up what's the network called? What's the?
It's just Business Buyers Network.
Business Buyers Network. Interesting. That's really cool. I think that's really, really cool, because you're right. I mean, there are so many opportunities. I didn't realize that statistic, 80%. It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
But boy, that's a high number.
It is. And the really unbelievable thing is that people I know have done it. And so, I had a business, a spa that I bought years ago, had ended up growing it and selling it pretty quickly. But I introduced myself to the neighbors, let them know I bought the business and all this stuff. And there's a retail store that, I knew they were getting a lot of business just because we would get a lot of flow over traffic and that kind of thing. And it'd been there for over 20 years. And so I was pretty shocked a few months after I'd sold the business that they had a store closing sign up. So I go in and talk to the owner. It's like, man, did business take a downturn? What's going on? And she's like, no, we had a great year last year. I pulled out 90,000. We, did about 500,000 in revenue, blah, blah, blah. I was like, but why would you close? And she said, well, I wanted to retire. It's time for me to move on. And I'm like, but why wouldn't you sell it? And she's like, well, who was going to buy this?
And you're like, I will.
I would have. So, there are a lot of business owners out there that, they really save for retirement, have an IRA, and they just don't think of their business as an asset that they can kind of get some additional cash in.
So when you're buying, because I know you're doing it on both sides, of buying and the selling, but do you have in your own mind sort of an idea on how long you want to hold on to the business, or do you have sort of parameters that you're working within, or are you looking at each opportunity as it comes about?
Yeah, we've got tons of parameters. I mean, one of the biggest things is you got to have a lot of deal flow. Then you've got to be able to filter that deal flow out. So you want to have some parameters. But at the end of the day, I tell people the deal making is not a science. It's definitely an art. And so as soon as you've used the parameters and filters to get rid of the deals and be able to focus on the 5 or 10 deals that are real and don't have any hidden landmines and things like that, then you're going to determine, hey, is this something that's the right fit? What should the deal structure look like? And, how can I pull this deal together?
Well, so you've had a lot of success in business, and many of our listeners are getting ready to launch into the small business world or franchise world. And I guess, one final question to you would be, what is the most important thing above anything else that you think they should know as they enter the wacky, wild, and often unpredictable world of entrepreneurship?
I've really, like I said, I'm passionate about this concept of buying existing businesses. And so I think the one thing that I would add to your toolkit is a little bit of information, or at least curiosity, about seeing what businesses are out there that you might be able to take and grow your vision on top of. It's really powerful to be able to take a business where you don't have to go out and find a space and make sure that it's going to be profitable for you. You don't have to spend money on the build out and figuring out your hiring policies and which employees are going to be good employees, and then training those employees and all of this stuff before day one, marketing, trying to make sure you're going to have a good opening day. You do all of that and you haven't made a single dime. And so adding to your arsenal just some tools around looking for existing businesses and considering building or even transforming that business that's already got some dollars coming in into your vision is just really powerful.
I love that. I think that's a brilliant strategy. By the way, do you watch The Prophet with Marcus Lemonis?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan.
Not surprising. Well, listen, Ace, this has been tremendous to talk to you and have you on the show. Where can people get a hold of you if they so choose, and anything else you'd like to leave off with?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, so check out @Ace Chapman. I answer my emails, so you can email me directly at acechapman@acechapman.com. And I've got a book that goes into, some of my deals and more details about this process on Amazon, and it's called The Ace Formula by Ace Chapman.
What's the book called again?
The Ace Formula.
Very, very cool. All right. Well, thanks again so much. I look forward to staying in touch with you, and really some great information you provided, so I really appreciate that.
Great, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us today on the Franchise Euphoria podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and provide a review. Also, please remember that although Josh Brown is a licensed and practicing attorney, nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, because it is not. The information contained in this podcast is general and educational in nature, and none of it should be relied upon as legal advice. That being said, if you have questions for Josh and would like to contact him, please email him at josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in to our next weekly episode.